A group of Senate Democrats are asking President Trump to reconsider his decision to let Nvidia and AMD sell AI chips to China in exchange for a 15% cut of revenue. The letter signed by Senators Chuck Schumer, Mark Warner, Jack Reed, Elizabeth Warren, and others. They're requesting details on that arrangement with Nvidia and AMD by this Friday. We should mention that in those letters, the lawmakers said that President Trump's deal amounted to America negotiating away its competitive edge, critical to national security. They're also warning that selling advanced AI chips to China could strengthen that country's military. Meanwhile, plans for the government to take a stake in Intel could reshape industrial policy as well and national security. Joining us right now, former Trump economic advisor Stephen Moore. He is the co-founder of Unleash Prosperity, also former Biden Treasury Secretary Natasha Sarin. She's a professor at Yale and the president of the Budget Lab. What did I say?
Treasury Secretary.
Oh. Official, I should say. Yeah. Could be the Treasury Secretary.
That'd be a big promotion.
Natasha, nice to see you. Congratulations on the elevation.
Yeah.
Nice
Steve,
we hardly knew you.
I want to start with you, Steve, though, because I'm curious how you think. You've been a free marketeer. I do not believe you've been somebody who's believed in industrial policy over the years. And here we are in a moment where clearly we are careening towards that world.
Yeah, you're right, Andrew. I'm a big enemy of industrial policy because it's never worked anywhere or any time. The free market has been much more productive in terms of creating great industries for the United States. And by the way, we have a really good example of a failed industrial policy in the CHIPS Act, which was passed by Joe Biden and was supposed to revive our chips industry. And if anything, it hurt our industry more than it helped it with the subsidies. So I don't want to see. Now, there is and I'm not a national security expert, so I want to be clear about that, but there is some national security portion of this that may justify some of the subsidies that they're talking about. But with respect to making America number one in artificial intelligence, I want the government to stay as far away as possible, just like they did in the internet age, which created, the Magnificent Seven and trillions of dollars of increased wealth for Americans.
Natasha, what do you think of what's happening here?
So, Andrew, we've gotten to talk some about industrial policy and the varying ways in which we might choose to shape the economy and encourage more production in the U.S. of certain types of goods. I actually think I disagree with Stephen in the case of semiconductors and chips. We are talking about pretty significant national security exigencies, and the idea of being reliant on China, an adversary in this way, and them having such control over this particular type of technology seems like deeply concerning. And so I think we still have to kind of learn a bit about what the specifics are with this potential stake in Intel and what it'll look like. But the idea of industrial policy in targeted areas where we're concerned about national security actually seems like quite good policy to me. And indeed I also disagree with Stephen on the CHIPS Act and think that that was an important step in that direction.
But Natasha, isn't this so interesting, this sort of strange bedfellows, everybody reversing, right? So you have, Schumer and Elizabeth Warren and Democrats who historically have actually been to some degree for industrial policy, right? Now, and by the way, for higher taxes generally for corporations and the like, now basically taking issue with the president over what historically, to some degree, they have liked. I mean, there are some people, the critics would look at it like that.
So I think the thing about, and we've talked about this before, but the thing about industrial policy is we really have to be honest about what the trade-offs are. Industrial policy isn't always good. It doesn't always mean economic growth. It doesn't always mean lower costs for consumers. And it doesn't always mean in better national security or less reliance on our adversaries. And that's why I think the idea of being sort of forthcoming about those types of trade-offs will lead you to the conclusion that in narrow areas of the economy where these national security exigencies are really quite significant, that's exactly where we should be talking about industrial policy. It's not for manufacturing writ large, it's for chips. And I think that distinction is pretty important, Andrew, and one that sometimes is missed in these debates.
I think it's more interesting.
So can I just add one point?
Hold on, Steve. Hold on. I think it's more. Okay. Hold on. I think it's more interesting that our two guests here are fair as foul and foul as fair. I understand the Democrats. Anything Trump does, they're going to write a letter that they hate it. But Natasha is our liberal person, and Steve Moore is our former Trump guy. And Steve Moore, but the Democrats, that's not interesting. Of course they're against it. It's Trump. They would, but Natasha just said you think it's pretty good policy, huh? And Stephen Moore has got his panties are all, or his, you're not allowed to use that anymore, but you're all bunched up in how horrible this is. Couldn't it be, Steve, this is an emergency, that we have a foundry here that we need, and I think that's what Natasha's point was, we need to have the ability to manufacture chips here. And that was the idea of both.
That's the CHIPS Act, Joe.
That's the CHIPS Act. And this is like a corollary to that. It could be an emergency.
So let me take you all back to a little over 40 years ago when I first came to Washington in 1982. The big issue back then was America needed a national industrial policy, not to defeat China, but you know what country it was we were worried about back then? Japan. And Japan was going to take over the whole world because they had a national industrial policy, we didn't. And then we avoided that route, and we went with the free enterprise system and free markets. And look at the world today. Our stock market is up 40-fold, and theirs has been flat. So countries that have tried industrial policy, look at Europe. Europe is the case study for industrial policy, trying to nurture certain industries.
So you think China's going to bring itself down?
So show me where it's ever worked. Show me where industrial policy has ever worked.
Steve, you think we don't need to worry about China? If that the extension of what you're saying is we don't need to worry about China because they will bring down themselves by overextending themselves and coming up with policies that don't make sense overall.
Well, let me be clear on this. I do think we have to worry about China. China is a very dangerous country, no question about that. What I'm saying is we will defeat them through our free enterprise system. They have a communist, centrally planned economy. Somebody show me anywhere in the history of the world where that has worked. So, look at you guys are worried about this. Look at we got the Magnificent Seven countries all here in the United States. They're worth more than virtually all the companies in Europe, in China combined.
I think the American economy is great. I think capitalism is so important, and I think we are so competitive vis-a-vis the rest of the world. I also think it's a problem that 90% of rare earths are processed in China, and I think that these are real concerns from a national security perspective, and we need thoughtful policy to address them. So I'm kind of heartened, frankly, to be seeing some of these discussions play out.
Making sense to me. Natasha, I'm on your side.
You're talking national security decisions, and Steve, you pointed out at the top, you're not an expert on national security. I mean, these are where, tough issues and tough decisions come down to it. I don't like picking government winners and losers, but I don't like feeling like we are beholden to one country or another when their interests are directly opposed to ours.
But if we want more industrial production here, we did something very important that every Democrat voted against, which were allowing businesses to immediately expense their capital purchases, what they can use to develop chips here in the United States. That was a great policy.
I agree. Immediate expensing is a great policy. I disagreed with other aspects of that bill that involve $3 trillion of deficit finance tax cuts to the top disproportionately. But I'm with you. I think that's good and important policy, as I think these conversations about industrial policy in the national security context specifically really are.
Joe's a Democrat.
No, it's just, Andrew's right. There's not a day that goes by when things aren't flipped.
Flipped. Right? This is totally flipped. This is like a flipped situation.
But President Trump. I mean, there's not a. But Moore never flips. He will never flip.
God bless you, Stephen, for not flipping.
Joe, this is the CHIPS Act. I'm not flipped. This is what we believe in.
Steve, I got a question for you, Steve. You obviously spent time with the president. You were in the White House with him, showing on the easel some of the numbers. Have you had this conversation with him directly?
You mean on this particular issue?
Yeah.
With respect to the chips, no, but I did tell him that the incomes have been way up so far in his first 5 months in office, a $1,000 increase, which was about twice as high as we had in 4 years under Biden. So look, I mean, I'm really bullish right now. Look at the headline today, Andrew, of the Wall Street Journal. Earnings are up almost across the board. What would investors not like about this picture?